Hey guys, welcome back to News to Astonishment, where we discuss comics, movies, games, and more. And I am filming this the night after I beat Spider-Man Miles Morales on the live stream. My live stream last night was the longest live stream I have ever done. I pulled a 6.5 hour live stream, so if in case you guys missed it, you can go ahead and check it out on my YouTube channel. So after you're done watching this review, perhaps, yeah, click on my channel and you can go ahead and check out my live stream. Now, I'm not saying go ahead and stay there for the whole 6 hours, but that'd be really cool and all. But it was an amazing time. I had fun doing it, and I kind of figured, why not just let's beat the game. So yeah, definitely pulled an all-nighter, if you will. So anyways, I'm here to review Spider-Man Miles Morales, and just to give it to you short, the game is wonderful. It is a beautifully made game. You can tell that Insomniac came from a good place. They really put a lot of heart and work into this game. Now, it's not as long as the original one. I'm not only going to tell you that this game is completely perfect, because it's not. It does have its issues and it does have its faults and stuff like that. But I just want to say, generally speaking, if I were to recommend a video game, I definitely would recommend Spider-Man Miles Morales. It is a wonderful game. It's beautifully crafted. It is a gorgeous looking game, and it's really, really nice to look at. Definitely does take advantage of the full PlayStation 5 hardware, which I was fortunate enough to play on the PlayStation 5. So as you can see right there, I played it on the PS5 and I had a blast. And I'm definitely going to go ahead and play the New Game Plus mode when I get a chance, and definitely do a live stream for you guys. Now, let's go over and talk about the characters, and I'm not going to get into spoilers. So for those of you who never had a chance to play the game, you're safe here. No worries. There will be no spoilers. So the character of Spider-Man Miles Morales is coming off fresh a year after the events of the first video game Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man. And to be exact, it takes place about a year after the events of Spider-Man: The City That Never Sleeps, where we see Miles take off and venturing into the world of Spider-Man. He's under the wing of Peter Parker Spider-Man, his mentor. And Peter Parker has to take off to vacation for a couple weeks with MJ on a trip to Europe, specifically Symkaria, where there's a civil war brewing there. And MJ is there to be reporting the case because she is a reporter for the Daily Bugle. So in the meantime, New York's only Spider-Man is Miles Morales. And New York and the people of the streets of New York are well aware that there is another Spider-Man out there, but he's really treated as just another carbon copy of Spider-Man. He's not really the real thing. And Miles Morales hasn't really gained the respect that Spider-Man has gained over the last 8 to 9 years that he's been Spider-Man. So oftentimes you would hear when Spider-Man Miles Morales is engaging in combat with like thugs and enemies, they would mock him, they would tease him, saying, "Oh, you're not the real Spider-Man," or "The real Spider-Man can handle us better than you can," or even not even the real Spider-Man can handle us. They would just tease him, and they would even call him like, Spider Boy or Kid or whatever. And they'd recognize that he's just a kid. But let's just say throughout the whole game, as you progress and finally beat the game in the final confrontation, you sort of gain that respect and people look at you as their Spider-Man. And it really does send out a very powerful message, and it's one message that's very gratifying. Now, the characters are all lovable characters. Miles Morales, let's start with him, the star of the show. Miles Morales is a very, 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 very likable character. Don't care what a lot of people would say or what they would think about the character, or if they think that he's like just a copy of Peter Parker. In my opinion, he's a very lovable character. He's really likable, and he's pretty OP. I mean, there were moments in time in this game where I was playing and fighting, other people and, thugs and thieves and whatever, that I'd feel kind of like a god, because if you don't know, Spider-Man Miles Morales has more than just wall crawling capabilities and jumping high and stuff like that. He also has bioelectricity in his body, or as he likes to call them, his venom powers. And he also has the cloak ability. So these powers are kind of nerfed in the game, whereas in the comics and other forms of media, he can actually go invisible for as long as he wants, and he can use the bioelectricity as much as he wants. Whereas it's nerfed here, and you kind of have to progress to actually, be able to, like, I guess, cloak a lot longer and use more venom ability. But on top of that, you feel very, very powerful, more so over than Peter Parker's Spider-Man. So overall, like, progressing throughout the main campaign, which is relatively short, I might add, is very gratifying because you gain abilities, and when these points called skill points are given to you, they do feel very gratifying because you feel like this sense of rewarding when you gain new abilities, and you can actually grow rather quickly in this campaign because, like I mentioned before, a good playthrough of the whole entire campaign, including side missions, you may end up taking about 12 to 15 hours tops. I doubt 15 hours, but about 12 to 15 hours to beat the game. I luckily beat the game about almost 12 hours. It took me about 11 and a half to almost 12 hours to beat the game. Relatively short game, and to a lot of the criticism out there that states that this game is kind of like a DLC, I wouldn't say it's DLC because I've played games that are actually hours like Resident Evil 3, but then again, that's a remake. So if you want to go ahead and count that, that's up to you. I kind of count it because that game is a lot shorter, but then again, it's a remake from a game from the 90s. And there's also the Uncharted Legacy game, which is relatively about like 7 to 8 hours at least. So that game's actually kind of shorter. But Miles Morales Spider-Man is akin to a game like that because it is kind of like a special sequel or a sidequel or a spin-off of Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man. And to me, I'd gladly call it a worthy successor and an amazing sequel to Marvel Spider-Man. Now, when the official Marvel Spider-Man sequel comes out, I'm just kind of curious if Miles Morales is going to be able to have a sequel of his own, but this time with a campaign as long as the original Marvel Spider-Man game. But with that being said, my only criticism about this game is kind of like the characters and how some of the story kind of progresses a little too quickly. Like there were some parts of the story that felt rather rushed, and that narrative, I wish we had more of a narrative. And what I mean by that, without getting into any specifics or spoiling anything, there are a couple of characters, including Miles, and there's this character involved with Miles, and what I had wished to see is Miles and the said characters to spend a little bit more time. We did get a bit, quite a bit of a backstory of this said character, but I wish we spent a lot more time with them just to get to know him a lot better, because a few points in the narrative did feel a little bit rushed, and this said character had like reasons to be upset at Miles when in fact this character actually had, I guess you can say, a bigger whopping secret than Miles. And that's as much as I'm going to get to that. I mean, and I see a lot of the hypocrisy there in that character's writing. And I kind of wished that was, a little altered, or I wish there was a little bit better writing involving that character. But that's all I'm going to say, because to me, it kind of came across a little annoying, and, there was a lot of hypocrisy in those moments. And I'm not going to say what it is, but you'll figure it out once you get to play this game. But all in all, it's a very, very good game. It's definitely worthy. It's definitely a worthy successor of the first Marvel Spider-Man game, and I highly suggest you pick it up because it's definitely a very, very powerful launch for the PlayStation 5. It is a beautiful looking game. The swinging mechanics. Oh my God, I forgot to mention the swinging mechanics. What's a Spider-Man game with its amazing swinging mechanics? The swinging mechanics in this game is heavily improved, and dare I say, it's much better than Marvel Spider-Man swinging mechanic. There are literally over 30 tricks you can do in the air as Miles Morales Spider-Man when you're swinging through New York City. And New York City has never looked better than ever. New York City is gorgeous, especially when you play it in high crisp 4K. And there are two modes that you can play this game. The first mode being a 4K 30 FPS fidelity mode. And that offers high resolution ray tracing, which is like emulated lighting, which looks completely crisp and clear and realistic. And then there's the performance mode, which is 4K at 60 FPS minus the ray tracing and other features that the fidelity mode has to offer. So whether you have a 4K television or a non-4K television, but at a high refresh rate with, like, let's say 60 hertz, 120 hertz, or 144 hertz, you can actually enjoy the best of both worlds. So I actually managed to play on my Sony 49-inch. It's a 4K TV, and it looks gorgeous. I'm always in awe when I play it, and especially the combat. The combat's another thing that's been really improved and worked on. And in Miles' case, since he has more powers than Peter Parker, of course, they implemented a lot of those powers in his combat, like the Venom Blast, the Venom Punch, and the Venom Kicks, and the throws. and there's even the cloaking and the stealth missions. They've all have been improved, and it's just amazing. Definitely a worthy successor, like I said before. Highly suggest you pick it up, and if you really want to get the full effect and the look of Spider-Man Miles Morales, definitely pick it up for the PlayStation 5. If you're lucky enough, maybe there is a PlayStation 5 at perhaps like at a Target or Walmart or something around you in your neighborhood. Go ahead and pick it up for the PS5. That's where you're gonna get like the full effect, the full performance, and like the full game, because this game was definitely made for PlayStation 5. So overall, I mean, again, my only criticisms. A bit of a rush narrative. The game's kind of short, but that's expected. That expectation was already set well before the release of the game. And there were moments where my game crashed, and my game did crash about 4 times last night on the live stream. So if you were there, you actually did manage to see my frustration there, where the game crashed 4 times, specifically in one zone, and that was like at a hideout for like the Tinkerer's hideout. That was at one hideout where it kept consistently crashing, but everywhere else it was fine. So that's like the only other bad experience I had about this game, is the consistent crashing and a bit of a rush narrative a little bit, and some of the characters needed some work. And the game is kind of short, but I had fun with it. I didn't really care how short the campaign was. At least the side missions didn't feel repetitive. There was this nice little app introduced in the game called the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app, which provided other types of side missions, and all of them were different. None of them were repetitive. The other side missions that I'm talking about, where like you are stopping a burglary or a car theft, those are reminiscent of the first Marvel Spider-Man games. Those can feel a bit repetitive, but at least there wasn't as much as there was in like the first Marvel Spider-Man game. So, of course, what's a Spider-Man game without stopping the occasional car thief or a burglary or a store burglary? So, anyways, on top of that, without sounding like I'm rambling on and being repetitive, overall, it's a wonderful game. Definitely pick it up. You should definitely play it. I'm sure you won't regret it. And with all my criticisms set aside and my praising of the game, I'm going to give Spider-Man Miles Morales a B+. Guys, that was my review for Spider-Man Miles Morales. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to those of you who stopped by my live stream to check out my gameplay. Thank you once again, and we're actually coming close to 1,400 subscribers. I'm really excited. And with all that being said, guys, thank you once again, and be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click on bell notifications so you all don't miss anything. And as always, I will see you all in the next comic panel.